Good evening and very welcome to the 5th Selborne College and Old Selbornians Association webinar as part of the 150-year Jubilee celebration. My name is Neil Erasmus and I'm employed by Selborne College as a Deputy Headmaster and also the Head of Subjects for Afrikaans. And therefore the theme of the webinar is Language in Action. We'll get some thoughts from Old Selbornians who are in the field of media, in entertainment, and the specific use of language in their careers. It will be discussion focused for the boys who may have an interest in a similar career. After all the panelists have spoken, we will then have a Q&A session. And therefore, I request from all attendees online to please submit their questions during the panelists' presentations. Please do so by clicking on the chat icon, which should be on the top right corner. Ladies and gentlemen, this is also showcased on the success of Old Selbornians, who we are all extremely proud of. I can almost say Selborne's got talent. Panelists will share their experience, what they have learned, and what they wish they knew earlier in their lives. Let us start. Our first panelist is Mr. Yolilwe Koshe, who matriculated from Selborne College in the year 2013. He completed his BA degree in journalism and media from Rhodes University in 2017. An award-winning sports journalist who is currently a sports reporter and producer at Newsroom Africa, as well as a sports writer for South African News. He is based in Randburg. Yolilwe has been published over 20 times by the Daily Dispatch, 6 times published by Soccer Duma Online. He is the first Sports Writer of the Year award recipient in Graucott's Mail over century-old history, and has covered plenty of professional sports, including Super Rugby and United Rugby Championship. Yolilwe, over to you.
Hello. All right, thank you so much. First of all, thank you very much for that introduction, Mr. Erasmus, and a very good evening to you, Mr. Erasmus, as well as the other panelists and everybody else watching. It's an honor to be amongst such names and to be amongst my fellow Selbornians. Just a bit of a background. Everything has been said about me. So I don't know, must I go further, Mr. Erasmus, or it's just a welcome and somebody goes ahead, or?
We want to hear about your life as a journalist. I've spoken about the formalities, your studies, but speak to us about your career, what you're doing in the media world as a sports presenter.
All right, so at the moment, more full-time, I'm with Newsroom Africa, Channel 405 on DSTV. There I'm a sports reporter, and I'm also a producer behind the scenes. So what that entails is going out to the field, carrying out various interviews with sports teams of a high profile, as well as going into communities which are not always given that media attention. So it's a balance of both. It's about telling stories. It's about, being able to make people's stories visible. It's about being able to just be able to make an impact on people's lives, and just to just make them visible. And also, when I'm not doing that, I'm behind the scenes. I'm preparing some of the stuff that you see on TV, some of the stuff that the anchors are writing. We do the research. We go online, and we try to simplify things. We use our writing to make it seem like a smoother process when the anchor is there. And on the other side, I'm a writer. I'm a sports writer. That's my trade. I've been writing for about 8 years. I started writing for the Dispatch while I was at Rhodes University as a first-year student. So I got published for the first time in 2014 when I went there for my vacation work. And since then, they've been very, very fond of my writing, and they asked me to return time and time again. And eventually, I was published over 20 times over various periods from 2014 up until 2020. And I've also written for Rugby 365. Yeah, that's a summary of where I am right now.
If I can ask you one question before I get to the second panelist, how do you decide on what will make an interesting report? I mean, we read articles and we find it quite interesting, but I'm sure you have to sift through many articles. How do you decide this is the one I'm going to publish?
Well, first and foremost is about what's the hot angle right now? What are people interested in reading at the moment? If a story has broken already, that is an angle for someone to go for. But for me personally, you're always looking for that angle people don't think about. You're always looking for, how do I progress the story if something is broken, right? So, for instance, if the story of Elton Yankees is broken, what goes out first is that he has been arrested for something. I have to go and find what that something is. I need to go and dig. I need to progress that story. I need to find the history. If there is a history, I need to be able to build the blocks if there are blocks to be built. So for instance, we can say Elton Yankees has been found guilty of this. Does he have a history of that? What else can I bring which is interesting to the readers? How can I progress the story? It's always about, the trick is, when you find information on a story, the first rule is, what would you be interested in reading? What piques your interest in that? Once you find that, then you naturally write towards that angle, and then more times out of not, fortunately for myself, it works. So yeah, that's how I look at it, Mr.
I'm very interested in the Elton Yankee story, obviously. I will come back to you. Right. Thank you very much for introduction and for telling us more about your career. Our second panelist, Mr. Supumziwe Bukwaba, who matriculated from Selborne College in the year 2006, with distinction, if I may add. He's an actor, voice-over artist, living and working in Cape Town. Supumziwe completed a general BA degree in film and media at UCT in 2010. Since then, he has gone on to represent brands such as Capita, Hunters, MTN, Eno, Heineken, DSTV, and many more. Throughout his career, he has lived according to one motto, which is, I'm willing to sell anything if someone's paying me for it. Many people have referred to him as the last person they'd want giving their children advice. Now that is intriguing.
That's right.
Over to you.
And now I will proceed to give people's children advice. Thank you very much, Mr. Erasmus, for the introduction. I'm actually going to set a little timer over here so that I don't go over, hopefully under time. Yeah, and thank you to Selborne for organizing all of this. It's great to be seeing some familiar faces and chatting to some old Selbornians. I guess I'm just going to kind of tell my story. I don't know if I'm going too far back. I'll go right back to the very beginning. I've always been interested in performing throughout school, throughout primary school and high school. I took every opportunity that I could to get on stage. I actually remember my very first performance when I kind of got bitten by the bug. And that was in grade 1, actually. Selborne Primary was putting on a Christmas Carol service play. And I landed the role of one of the wise men, which I was very excited about. It's quite a prominent role, I thought. And on the day of the performance, the kid who was supposed to be playing, I think it was Joseph's donkey. Joseph had a donkey. And there were 2 kids who were supposed to be in the donkey suit. And the kid who was in the back half of the suit, on the day, the teacher came up to me and said that apparently he'd gained too much weight and could no longer fit in the suit. She was like, would you mind taking his his position. I was quite upset about it because no one was going to see me inside the suit, but I agreed. But I remember when it was our turn to come on, we came out on stage and the audience roared with laughter. Just it looked ridiculous. And I sort of got bitten by the bug at that moment. I was like, oh, I can elicit this kind of response out of people on stage. And after that, I was just, you know, chomping at the bit, any opportunity to get up on stage. I took, so I was doing a lot of like, public speaking, a lot of writing sketches and putting them on for the school on stage and all sorts of things. University, I studied film and media. That was a very theoretical space to be in, but it gave me a good sort of overall understanding of the industry that I was about to work in. University was also great because there were a lot of other opportunities to take part in various performance aspects. I did UCT radio for the time that I was there, doing a breakfast show with a friend of mine and a drive show as well. It was a good experience. It was a terrible show, I'm pretty sure, but you know, we were young, we didn't know what we were doing. It was still fun. After that, when I entered the world of work, I just did a lot of freelance stuff. I mean, my thinking, I think anyone who kind of wants to go into this space, you're probably going to find at some point you're going to have to decide between, you know, there's the pure passion, whatever that passion is, and then there's rent on the other side. And those two things don't always align perfectly. You know, you might find that some people, they do it, choose to do a 9 to 5, and they follow their passion in the evening. That's definitely one way to go about it. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. The way that I did it was I knew that what I wanted to do was somewhere in the entertainment, performance, media space. Wasn't sure exactly what, so I just picked up a lot of different freelance things. I was doing radio, like one show a week at KFM. I was doing acting, I was doing voiceover work, I was writing for a satirical puppet show called Zon News. I was teaching improv comedy workshops and classes. Just basically anything I could get my hands on, about 6 or 7 different gigs. And that worked out quite well for me because firstly, what it helped with was it can be difficult in the early parts of your career to make money, to make decent cash, especially when you're freelancing. So all of those things kind of came together to make one feasible salary type of thing. When 3 of them weren't doing well, the other 3 were doing quite well. So it worked out financially, but also it worked out in terms of it gave me a good sense of like, okay, cool. Between all of these things, what am I most passionate about? What would I like to spend more time with? And what is, you know, economically making a lot of sense for me? Eventually it came to pass that I was like, okay, acting and voiceover makes a lot of sense financially. I also enjoy doing the 2 of them. So I sort of like slowly but surely cut out the other stuff and started zeroing my focus in there. The rest is history. I attended lots of castings from there on out. I got an agent. I advise anyone who's going to go into this kind of work, you need agents. You will absolutely not be able to do all of this stuff by yourself. So I have an agent for acting in Cape Town, voiceover in Cape Town, voiceover in Joburg, voiceover in England as well. So as many agents as you get will be good for you because they are the people who are going to do all the contractual stuff and connect you to the world of work. Yeah. I think that's about 5 minutes, so let me not continue talking and say that's me.
Thank you. We'll come back to you. Our third panelist, colleague of mine at Selborne College, Mr. Jono Kruger. He matriculated from Selborne College in the year 2000. And then studied and completed his degree in theology, where he did his honors degree at the Baptist Theological College of South Africa. He played professional rugby for the Border Bulldogs from the year 2003 to 2007. He was then selected to represent South Africa in the Sevens rugby, but unfortunately an injury forced him to withdraw from the team. Jono was in the ministry for 10 years, while starting an NGO in 2006, using sports and life skills to train the rural youth. He spoke to over 30 schools across the Eastern Cape about his NGO. He began teaching English at Selborne College in 2015. He then founded Tries for Lives, using sport as a fundraising platform, and this led to him co-founding Sports for Lives, using the same platform. Jono also coaches rugby and water polo, and is one of our world-class commentators on Supersport Schools. Jono, over to you.
Thanks, Mr. Rasmus. Before starting, I've got to just admit that I said no 3 times as the guys approached me. I thought I was way out of my depth here with the amazing talent we have. Just really, really great to hear your guys' story. I'm going to be very brief, but just share my story and how language has been put into action for me personally. I think as a school kid going to Selborne, my last thought ever leaving the school would have been being a teacher back at the school or doing anything of the sort. So to be sitting here sharing about language is just mind-blowing. But there was something that occurred while I was at school that for me was communication to me, and it changed my narrative as a schoolboy in a fairly well-off environment and background, and I wasn't aware of how that story and that language impacted me. One of our teachers, after a rugby practice, invited me to come into the rural areas, and we'd go and visit the township kids and play with them and do sport and share stories with them, values, and give them something to drink and eat. And I remember coming home and washing my hands because they were dirty and going, wow, I've actually got running water in my home that I can actually just wash my hands clean. And I think that that moment stuck with me forever. And I've done a few different things with my life, but the story of giving hope to potentially hopeless or hope in a time of adversity for me has really been my message going through my life in the different aspects that I've been involved in. And for me, I've seen language impact people around me and impact myself. I love what was said about Winston Churchill. They said that he mobilized the English language and sent it out into battle. He mobilized the English language and sent it out into battle. And when adversity and inequality are around, I believe that language can be something of action. I believe that we can use language to make a difference in our world. And yeah, I'm a humble teacher and doing the things in our grade school, Selborne. But before getting there, I was a pro rugby player, as was mentioned. But even within my sport, I saw a need for these professional sportsmen to do something with the platform and the influence that we had. And so we started an NGO where we used to go into the rural areas and coach and bring some of these professional sportsmen into those rural areas. We did all sorts of things. So there was life skills that branched out of that. We even went into the prisons, the juvenile prisons, and we coached a team there, and just amazing experience. We got funding to build resource centers, and we ran camps for underprivileged kids and street kids. And during the 2010 Soccer World Cup, we brought all the street kids off the street for 2 weeks and we did amazing work there in terms of the message that we shared of hope in their hopeless situations. Spoke at many schools as a guest speaker, motivating and encouraging young people. And obviously also was in the ministry for 10 years, where the theology that I used, the theory became practical as I gave people hope and maybe shared messages of hope to them as well. But transitioning into education, kind of carried this need for community upliftment and using this message of hope to do something. And soon after being a coach, I realized that that a lot of our players and a lot of our boys in our school don't necessarily realize what's out there, that South Africa is the most unequal country in the world, and that we might be educating boys, but are we actually showing them the reality of what's happening? And so I set up a basic initiative in the beginning called Tries for Lives, where we said, what if we played for something bigger than just success? Who cares if we had an unbeaten season, which we didn't, but we did do well. But what happens if we played for something called significance? And success is fleeting, but significance has a lasting effect. And so we chose a children's home, and we said, what if we scored enough tries and raised enough money to feed 10 abandoned babies for a year? And the boys did that, and we were able to support that children's home. And then the next season we did some more things, and it just started snowballing from there. It then went into other schools, and now we have a national organization that has impacted and served 16 other NGOs so far over a short period of time. Over R1 million that has been raised through those initiatives, and there are 50 different campaigns that have started. We are now pleased to say that the Sport for Lives program is now filtering into the life orientation curriculum. Grade 11 boys will be doing their community outreach program through the Sport for Lives initiatives. They're going to do all sorts of crazy things in teams of fives, ride for lives, tries for lives, goals for lives, swims for lives, even guys in the gym wanting to do reps for lives. And so they're doing a 3 or 4 hour stint, and they're raising funds for our initiative that we've taken on as a first team this year, the Buko initiative. And so we're seeing, even in the school concept, the use of language and telling young boys that there is something bigger than you just being successful out there, that you can take your message, you can do something with your skill and your talent, and you can share a story of hope wherever you are. You can do what you're passionate about, and that passion can turn into a purpose. And so that's a short share. We've got bigger dreams. We're wanting to see an academy one day where we can take these underprivileged kids and share our stories with them too. And so along the way, I've seen language in action through my life. Thanks.
Jono, thank you. Very, very inspiring story. And we'll get back to you as well. Right, our next panelist, Mr. Tatson Konzo, who matriculated from Selborne College in the year 2003. Tats is a South African stand-up comedian. He's a singer and a television personality. He's best known as the host of the ETV reality competition SA's Got Talent, like Selborne's Got Talent. He was also a co-host on Kuyagatanda Na. Tats was a top 24 finalist in the 3rd season of Idols in the year 2005. In 2008, he got his big break when he made the top 8 of the SABC1 reality competition, So You Think You're Funny. Once the show ended, he was asked to tour with the top 3 for the season. Tats performed at Cape Town Baxter Theatre, at Johannesburg, the Market Theatre, at the Pieter Torin Theatre in Monte Cassino. He was also the sole host of SA's Got Talent. Tats was the 7th host of the Comedy Central series, Comedy Central Presents Live at Parkers in 2012. Tats was the guest speaker at Selborne College prize giving, which happened to be Mr. Gunn's last prize giving as headmaster of Selborne College. And I remember Tats turning chess champion Raymond Ibbison into a school hero. A night many people will never forget. Tats,
amazing.
over to you.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Sorry.
There's no video footage for Tats. Some technical glitches, but we can all listen to Tats. And while we're listening to Tats, please remember, send through your questions for the panel. Over to you, Tats.
Hi everyone, so awesome to hear the different stories. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome. Jono, great work. Amazing stuff, buddy. I think for me, I'll start from the 2008 because I think that's kind of when I started stand-up, when I did the TV show. It was almost like a Idols, but for comedians. But it was a competition on TV, and I was coming from church, going home, and then I saw this big studio lot full of people in queues, dressed up in like if you can imagine like characters, like big hair, hats, glasses, like real like characters, you know. So I walked in and I was like, what is this? Found out it was this competition. And they said I should enter, take a chance. And I was like, I've never done stand-up before, but they were like, no, it's fine. It was about 11 o'clock. They were like, it's fine. You can put your name down and come back at 2 o'clock. So I was like, okay, 3 hours. I think maybe in like 3 hours I can come up, because you had to come up with 2 minutes. So I went home and I was trying to figure out what to say. But it was weird. It was weird trying to figure out what to say to make people laugh if you've never done it. And now you have to do it like on purpose. So for about the first hour, I was just writing and throwing stuff away, writing and throwing stuff away. And I just couldn't crack this thing. And then it was 12 o'clock. But I used to play guitar. So eventually I kind of had this idea to pick up the guitar and maybe write a funny song. Immediately I felt a little bit comfortable because it's something I know. And it's so funny when I did that, I thought it was like the most innovative idea. I was like, no one has ever seen this. A comedian with a guitar singing. I'm about to rip this thing. And then obviously I found out that people have been doing it for centuries. But I think for me, it was like, I think the ignorance gave me the confidence to be like, I'm bringing something that's also something in the midst of all these people with hats and like speeches and monologues, and these guys like really looked ready. So I think when I went to the audition, my ignorance in some way also gave me confidence, because I was like, I'm gonna give them something. And I remember singing a song. The song was about how we were waiting out in the sun for so long, and the judges were taking so long, and we were so hungry. And I remember I sang it to the tune of Michael Jackson's Dirty Diana. And it was, the lyrics were something, been standing out in the sun, it's been a long, long day, been hungry, thirsty, and hard, but no, I won't complain. So David having some Nando's in that long, long break. Nobody told me to pack a scuffy, I won't complain. And then I just carried on, and I carried on, and little by little, I think my first laugh the first laugh I ever got was on that line. Nobody told us to pack a scuffy, I won't complain. When I heard the judges just give a little giggle, I was like, I've got him. And then I got through to the next round, and yeah, I got kicked out in the top 8. And I remember when I did get kicked out, I was like, wow, I did that. That was amazing. And I'd never done it before, and I've been on TV, and I honestly thought I was finished. I thought, okay, well, I've done that, tick, and it's done. But then when they called me for the finale, the producers called me after they'd eliminated me. They were like, yo, can you come to the final and like do a song for the final? And that's when I was like, well, looks like I've got something here, because they did have their 3 funniest people, but they still called me to come on. So I think that's the only reason why I carried on doing stand-up, because of that. Otherwise, when they eliminated me, it was just literally something I was trying and tried, and then I was done. Then I traveled with the guys who were doing the shows, and then I found out there was money in this thing, and then I kind of just carried on, and it's been stand-up ever since. I think unlike Spums, where I think for me I made a decision early to kind of do the plan A and nothing else. I think once I discovered that I did have something different, even though there was a comedy industry filled with comedians, I think the guitar really gave me confidence to be like, I'm gonna go for it. So from very, very early, I said to myself, I want to be good at this thing. I'm not gonna let anything distract me, because it's very easy to get distracted in entertainment. You might start as an actor, and then you find yourself like doing all sorts of different things, because it's just, you're trying to make it. And like Spumze was saying, the rent thing is very real. So all of a sudden you're doing adverts, now you're doing corporates, and you're not really like doing what you actually wanted. So I think making that decision very early for me as well, in terms of just keep doing stand-up, keep being good at stand-up. And if you keep doing that, then all these other things that people are going to see in your stand-up, they're going to call you to be a part of all these different things. So even the TV stuff that I've done, where I've hosted shows, it's because I've been doing stand-up. even the confidence and way that I did that last talk that Mr. Gunn invited me to. It was absolutely all the years that I learned doing what I do. And I mean, I enjoyed it thoroughly because the brief that Mr. Gunn gave me was so great. He was just like, talk to the boys. Doesn't matter about anything else. He just briefed me to talk to the boys. And I think that, just in terms of tying it with language and being able to communicate effectively with people, just opened me up to not worry about the teachers behind me and completely talk to the guys in a way that I knew and in a way that I was. And I honestly think that's why it connected, because I was given that brief to just speak to them. So yeah, I think I'll end it there for now. But yeah, still doing stand-up since 2008. As much as you might see me do lots of other things, I think my commitment is still the communication through stand-up.
Thank you, Tuck.
Yeah, that's
I'll come back to you and to hear more about your life and your stories. Certainly
awesome.
some interesting things you said there. Our fifth panelist, Mr. Sherwin Brycepeace, who matriculated from Selborne College in the year 1996. He has been with SABC News since May 2002. Sherwin, congratulations on 20 years with SABC.
Hey.
Even a correspondent with the bureau chief in New York since the year 2008. He has reported on the work of the United Nations extensively, particularly the Security Council, the General Assembly, and the Sustainable Development Goals, and is a sought-after moderator for the UN and member state events. He has worked extensively with the Secretariat, the Office of the President of the General Assembly, and various other UN agencies. Sherwin has conducted one-on-one interviews with Secretary Generals Ban Ki-moon, Antonio Guterres, the DG of the WTO, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, with the IMF MD, Kristalina Georgieva, and also interviews with Presidents Obama, Kalulet, Mbeki, Zuma, Ramaphosa, among others. As the African national, Sherwin served as the president of the UN Correspondent Association in the year 2017 and 2018. He's a graduate of the School of Journalism at the Rhodes University in Grahamstown, Makanda, and is a recipient of the university's 2016 Emerging Old Rhodian Award. Sherwin, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Erasmus. Selbornians, Old Selbornians, members of staff, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to be part of this discussion today. It's my first time returning to anything Selbornian since that innocuous matriculation in 1996. Thanks for highlighting that, which probably makes me older than most of you, but probably younger than some of your parents. But, you know, that might come down to a coin toss. I'm sounding particularly nasal today. I returned a COVID positive test yesterday, but my symptoms are mild. I'm vaccinated and boosted. So I expect to make a full recovery in the days ahead. And please follow the science, go and get vaccinated, and do not follow your mother's WhatsApp group. The topic of today's discussion is language in action. So I will share some of my personal thoughts on the topic as it pertains to my career in part, but also my experiences in New York City. As some of you know, I'm a broadcast journalist with SABC News, and I've been based at the United Nations now for more than a decade. So my job is literally about using language to tell stories, to inform and to educate, be that related to geopolitical concerns like the current war in Ukraine, the often complex functioning of organs like the 15-member UN Security Council or the 193-member State General Assembly, issues around women's equality and the empowerment of women and girls, particularly in the South African context, given the huge problem of gender-based violence we face at home, or to put it differently, violence inflicted in large part by men on women. Also topics around climate change and broader issues around the Sustainable Development Goals and the Sustainable Development future we should all be part of, right? So in many ways, my job, it really encapsulates what it means for language in action. The other interesting aspect about language in my current context is that the UN operates in 6 official languages. So on any day you are exposed to English, Arabic, French, Spanish, Russian, and Mandarin, among others, and a team of real-time interpreters that make it possible for us all to understand each other. And I'm teeing this up to make a particular point here. I remember being in high school and thinking about my career choice and not being a maths wizard or a science genius, and knowing where my strength lied meant I was always going to be a poster child for a humanities degree. Something in the arts, maybe drama, something to do with language, music even, law, landing on journalism. At a time when the internet was exploding, where tech was the new frontier, where my mother would literally cut out articles from the Daily Dispatch about how poorly people in humanities in general, but journalism in particular, got paid. She would take the articles to the back of my bedroom door so that when I closed it, I would see how badly paid my future looked. Imagine it, probably 1995, just won the Rugby World Cup. Nelson Mandela hands the trophy to Francois Pienaar. Joy in every corner of the country, and you feel elated about your future, and you walk into your bedroom, close the door, and the headline reads, "Journalism and Earnings Dead End." To her credit, my mother has since apologized for struggling and failing to push me in a different direction. So what have I learned since is that language and humanities matter today more than ever. The UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, is a good example. He is fluent in 3 of the 6 UN official languages and is able to switch from English to Spanish to French on a dime, in addition to his native tongue, which is Portuguese. So when you think about a career, when you think about where you want to study, which universities you want to apply for admission to, which countries you want to visit and explore, language and the ability to use your words as they were intended or otherwise can literally change how you see the world, where you will go, what you will do, and what you will feel comfortable doing. Multilingualism is an amazing tool and benefits anyone's career path. I sadly only speak English and Afrikaans with a smidgen of Xhosa when my neurons are firing. And if there's one regret I have, is that I didn't push myself to learn more languages when I was younger, because language is power. And being able to speak as many versions out there immediately makes you a more powerful individual. And not everyone will be the UN Secretary General or an ambassador or CEO, but I have a friend, late 20s, very young, who works in a Manhattan art gallery. No tertiary education, but born in America to Venezuelan parents, so Spanish is her first language. She went to a French school in New York that speaks fluent French, and being American speaks English, or what I like to call American. And she's signing off on $200,000 art deals just because she knows how to communicate in 3 of the world's languages. Learned how to sell art, and now with ease, because she's proficient in 3 world languages. And as a final point, how you use language, and I think this lines up nicely with what Jono was talking about earlier, how you use language also matters. It matters not just in your ability to understand each other, it matters also in what we hope to achieve in life. And I'm hoping that in 2022, we can all agree that climate change is real and coming for all of us. And so it is up to you and I, it's our collective duty to find the Greta Thunberg in all of us. I remember during, you know who Greta Thunberg is, right? The 19-year-old Swedish climate activist who sat outside Parliament to highlight the issue of climate change. I remember during a recent climate change summit at the UN General Assembly, this 15-year-old at the time, screaming her frustration at a packed General Assembly hall that at the time included heads of state, prime ministers, foreign ministers. Quote, "How dare you," she said. A 15-year-old using her agency and her words to communicate her outrage at the lack of progress from those in power. Take women's empowerment. As boys and young men, think for a moment about the generations upon generations of women who have been treated as second-class human beings just for being women. Forced to hide their pregnancies without any right to choose the outcome. Shunned by families. Beaten and raped by men without recourse. Killed. Roles in the home rather than in the office or in business. Generations of discrimination that have been borne by your fellow human beings just because they were of a different sex. Women that have birthed our humanity and yet struggle to find their authority in a world that is shamelessly dominated by patriarchy. How will you as young men use language to ensure that we speak up for women in our lives and in our chosen careers? So I've given you two examples of some of the pressing issues that are facing us as a global community, complex matters that will require each of us to use our words, to use our language, to use our agency, and to be intentional about it if we are going to succeed in bridging the gaps we see between individuals, between communities, between nations, and effect the changes, right, Jono? Effect the changes we hope to see in our lifetimes and through the careers that we follow. So I thank you for your attention, and I look forward to your questions, and I need to wipe my nose. Thanks.
Great applause to all 5 Old Selbornians for fantastic presentations. We really learned a lot from what you guys were saying. And I hope that the attendees out there are preparing the questions, getting it through so we can ask you. I've got a couple of questions. I think I'm going to go with Jono. Jono, the campaign Tries for Ubuko is the current campaign that you're busy with. Tell us more about this campaign which you are promoting this year. Give us a bit more detail about Tries for Ubuko.
So Ubuko is an interesting young man. He is a grade 8 learner at our school, and he started at Selborne Primary. He contracted a disease that I'm not going to try and pronounce now, but basically led to septicemia, and he lost both of his legs and pretty much all his fingers on the one hand. He basically has a thumb and a pinky, he walks around at school with blades every day. He climbs the stairs. He stands in lines. He does everything that the boys do. Even tries to play tennis. He's just a phenomenal individual. But every time he has to take a bottle and just drink out of a bottle, he has to use 2 hands because he doesn't have enough fingers on the hand. And so through the initiative that we had, credit to our first team coach, Chase Morrison, he said, what if we do something in-house for the 150th? What if we do, the charity starts at home concept? And he then spoke to Ubuko and said, what if we could help you get that hand? And so we went and got a hand done and fitted. It's a fully robotic mechanical hand that attaches to his into his bone structure. And it would basically give him full use of a second hand, and it would help him, and quoting his own words, to be more normal and to just do the things that the boys at Selborne College are doing. And so we're looking in-house in terms of our family this year, and for our 150th, we're rallying as many people around the first team, but it's more than just the first team. It's the community. It's the coffee stand at every derby that's put the logo on their cup and putting 5 rand towards every cup that's sold. It's people that have just come out of the woodwork and said, we want to help this young man get a hand. And so we're literally lending a hand to a Selbornian this year.
Thank you, Jono. Really a very noble cause. And while at this, I'm appealing to all Old Selbornians out there, please support this worthy cause. I think we'll make a fantastic difference in the life of this young man at Selborne College. And he's really a phenomenal young man. He wants to be, and he is, a normal Selbornian. Yolulwe, I've got a question for you. You are the youngest of the panelists this evening, and this question comes from one of your friends. I have watched your career with interest, and I see on social media that you are associated with Mr. Gary Lemken, one of the finest sports journalists in South Africa and my friend and classmate. Have you not had the opportunity to work with Gary? And if not, would you like the opportunity to work with Gary? Have you worked with him? If not, would you like the opportunity to work with him?
We've had an encounter on, I think LinkedIn is where we have spoken, and we spoke about our Selborne College history. We haven't really had the opportunity to work together. It's something that we explored just before I got the opportunity to work in, if I'd say, mainstream media while I was still looking, because just 3 years ago, I was also trying to get into journalism mainstream. I had come out of university for quite some time and didn't have an opportunity to work, you know. So I was in a bit of a space of bother, and I was trying to, you know, contact as many people as I could, and I could see the profiles, and I came across him. And at the time, he wasn't necessarily linked to any publication himself. So, you know, but obviously, I would never close the door with working with anybody in media as long as we're going towards a similar direction, which is sport in my field. And obviously, I would not say no to working with a fellow Old Selbornian. That goes without saying. That would be a bonus. And yeah, but I also, Mr. Erasmus, I don't think I had the chance to speak more about my story. I think I was trying to save myself short earlier on because I thought maybe that question was going to come. You know, so I just want to just give a little brief summary about, you know, how I got into the media profession as well. It won't take too much time. Having listened to Mr. Sherwin Brian's piece, it sort of, you know, got back memories from my time as well. You know, growing up, I don't even know what journalism was, but my first memories as a kid, I used to see my father every day. He was reading the Daily Dispatch, and I was wondering why is this man always reading this paper? What's with this paper? I would try to get his attention, and he was just reading this paper. So I asked him one day, I was like, why are you reading this paper? What's so interesting in this paper? And it's like, because one day when you ask me questions, I want to be able to answer you truthfully and give you the education. So that didn't register in my mind. I still didn't know what journalism was. I carried on with my life. And after I got into the profession itself, even that, I never had goals of being a journalist. When I was a kid, I just wanted to play soccer for Kaizer Chiefs and Bafana Bafana. I had all these posters on my wall. And so, yeah, eventually in grade 11, I found out that, okay, maybe because growing up as a sports fanatic, and I used to find any little bit of unfinished paper around the house and just finish up in your papers and write fictional articles from my world of sport. So I thought maybe if I go into writing and fuse that with my sports, then I could make a living out of sports journalism. And also being, I wasn't too bad in history. You know, that's where the seed was planted. Credit to Ms. Patrick for that. You know, I used to be more on the 80s side. So yeah, that also, and my English paper threes were not that bad either. So that also gave me a hint of the direction I should take. But when it all came 360 for me is when I was at a Grocos Mill Sport in Makanda, and I was then tasked in my second year of the publication to mentor younger journalists coming in, and I still don't understand that because I was young myself. But I was mentoring them and I was hosting workshops, and one of the things I said to them about language, it all ties back to language, is the responsibility we have as journalists, you know, people that use language. It goes back to the history when we studied this subject called propaganda, you know, where you can influence so many people with just what you say. You know, you can build narratives and you can have people thinking in one direction and you can build their whole knowledge just by what you write and what they take from you. That's what I used to say to the people that I mentor in terms of the in journalism world. I said we have such a huge responsibility with the language that we use as journalists, you know, because one wrong word and you've turned a kid's narrative, a kid's way of thinking for the worse. But if you use your powers, if you use your knowledge of language, if you use the right word, you can shift their mentality into a positive narrative. So that for me ties into the topic as well as journalism in my sense, you know. So yeah, when it all goes 360 again, you know, I end up writing for the Daily Dispatch, the same paper my dad was holding up, and I didn't understand why he was holding up this paper. I end up writing for that. And funny enough, my first ever article was on table tennis, which just happens to be his favorite sport, and I still don't understand why. But yeah, it just all happened to come 360 for me in the profession of journalism. So yeah, that's mine for now.
Can I just ask that
Thank
everybody
you.
mute your microphone taps? And I think, Mr. Erasmus, you had your mics open when he was speaking, so it's difficult to hear.
Okay. Sherwin, wow, let's get to you. Sherwin, you have
Okay.
interviewed some incredible people during your career. If you could interview anyone, deceased or living, who would that person be? Second question, actually two questions. Second question, we all know Sherwin Bryceface is a real pro. Have you ever moved on live TV?
Say that again?
Have you ever booped, make mistakes on live TV?
Yeah. I'll start with the second question. My very first show doing live television was for a program called Weekend Live, right? It was the first weekend iteration of what is Morning Live today. So Vuyo and Leanne used to do Morning Live, and myself and a lady called Cindy Marby would present this new weekend show, right? Which meant that on a Saturday and a Sunday morning, I had to be up at 3 a.m. while you guys were having your last round. At the club. I used to drive through Melville, and you'd sort of see people snaking out of the venues, like still partying outside their cars while I was driving to work, very sober and very glum with myself. And the first show I did was somewhere, it was on location. I was in the field, my co-host was in studio, and everything technically under the sun that could go wrong went wrong. At the time, I was just trying to do my links, do my interviews, link to the ad break, and got the opportunity to watch this 90-minute broadcast back afterwards, and it was an absolute shambles. The meeting, the post-production meeting we had after that was just people throwing daggers at each other. And this was my inauguration, right? This was my first taste of live TV in South Africa, which totally bombed. And I think what that taught me was that, well, you can't go any lower. You just couldn't possibly go any lower. The only way up was up. The only way forward was up. And so the second show got better. I got more comfortable. And so with experience, you're able to deal with those technical faults a little better than you might on your first day. So experience matters. Time in a particular role matters. Just my ability to have spent the last decade working on a particular beat called the United Nations has allowed me to become particularly proficient in the workings and understanding and the familiarity with the different role players. I mean, I have a really good relationship with the current UN Secretary General. He likes to sit down and have discussions with me, and I think that comes with time. So you might fail at the beginning in your career. That's what you call a stepping stone and a building block. So failure is part of your growth in life, your growth in your career, and the wisdom that you seek to achieve through the length and breadth of your life on this earth. I interviewed Barack Obama. I mean, you're asking me in the middle of his presidency, you asked me who, maybe Nelson Mandela. I didn't get to interview Nelson Mandela. I was in the room when he walked in. He was hosting the Irish president at the time. I was an intern at Reuters in Johannesburg. He walked out of his house in the house. Hello, how are you? And, and I was like, oh my God, there he is. But I've had some really interesting experiences. I mean, I interviewed Obama in the Roosevelt room of the White House. Michelle Obama walked past before he walked in, and she waved at me through the door, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's almost 7 foot tall, especially in those stilettos. And so I have that wonderful experience that's difficult really to sort of say, there's someone else, maybe Oprah, have a sit down with Oprah maybe. But I'll tell you this, Mr. Erasmus, don't confuse a good interview with who the person is. If the person has a position, is a CEO, is a boss of something, or a sports star. Some of the best interviews are people that are working in NGOs, where people are working in the women's equality space, in the climate change space, people that are changing, addressing poverty in our lives, people that you might not know, right? The work that Jono is doing is so inspiring. Wow. Let me just give you some credit here. I actually Googled you, and the picture of that boy popped up standing outside Selborne. So I had a reference point to what you were talking about. So well done to you. So it's not who you interview, it is the substance of the interview that is important to make an interview great. It's not the name of the person. Obama could have been having a bad day. That could have been a really horrible interview. Maybe he might not have been interested or interesting, right? But maybe the grandma who's feeding her kids, Epinet Mbeki, what Epinet Mbeki did in Idutwa in the Eastern Cape for many years, feeding her community, refusing to move with her son to his big fancy house. So her sons are very successful individuals. She stayed in the Eastern Cape. She stayed she knew what her truth was, and she has been an inspiration to all of us generations since. So it's not so much about a big name. It is about the content and the research and the diligence of doing a good job in an interview that I think is important, rather than the person you're interviewing.
Wow, thank you. Really, thank you for that. Sibumziwe, your face is so familiar to us and the populace. Is that at times a hindrance when you are recognized in public? I'm sure in the beginning it was nice, people saying hi, how are you doing, etc.
Sure.
But and you have the right to be very proud of what you have achieved. But do you ever get used to being recognized out in the street?
Well, I mean, I think there's definitely levels of getting recognized on the streets, and I wouldn't say I'm at a level that it would be too much of a stress yet. I can see how if it was very intense for, say, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, that would be very difficult. But look, it's a tricky thing because I think it also depends on the type of person that you are. Part and parcel with stuff that uses your face as part of the work that you're doing is that you're going to become more recognized. Not everyone enjoys that so much. I do actually think a lot of performers, particularly a lot of actors, maybe even tuts, I don't know, maybe with comedians as well. But a lot of actors are very private people. As much as they like to do the performance, it often comes from a place of you know, internal explorations that you want to do and that you like doing, and you like to put yourself in the shoes of other people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a person is a big extrovert. I don't mind it as much. I think I am more private than what the kind of industry, the kind of line of work that I'm in inspires. But doing a Capitec ad and a Hunter's ad here and there, there's a certain amount of recognizability that you have, which is very different, I think, to the higher ends of this kind of line of work. So I don't know how I'd feel if, say, I was doing, the Avengers. If I just acted in the Avengers, it might be a different story. But for where I am now, it's still manageable.
Who would you act as in the Avengers?
That's an excellent question. I think Thanos. Forgive me for saying, I know he was the bad guy, but I loved Thanos. What a guy! What a character!
Thank you, Smooth. Tuts.
Yes.
Comedy Central in South Africa has gone from strength to strength, especially, like they said, the local content. How do you see the future of Comedy Central for South African artists?
Yikes. That's such an interesting question, because I think for me, I will say that stand-up comedy is probably the most underused and under-recognized art form in terms of its power to actually speak to people directly. I'm in Joburg, and I have the ability and the opportunity to work in different spaces. Joburg is such an eclectic city. You can be doing a gig in one suburb and you're sitting in front of a certain type of people, and then you travel across and you literally can't do the same jokes that you just did in the same city, because it's just a completely different mix of people. So the stand-ups who are practicing and actually doing stand-up have learned how to speak to South Africans, if I can put it quite plainly. We know how to get points across. We know how to get uncomfortable points across. We know how to speak about things and elephants and all this stuff. And on top of that, have people laughing. But I think it's partly us to blame, because stand-ups aren't very, it's almost like the opposite of Sherwin. We're not very professional. So let me not say for all of us, it's almost like the general consensus is that we're these dangerous, can't be quite trusted with sensitive audiences because we just blab and talk. And so for me, I think the longer I've stayed in stand-up and the longer I've stayed in stand-up and become better at it, I realize that there's very few people who stay in it, because it's such an easy industry to get into, but it's very hard to stay in. But those who do stay in know how to speak to the country. So it's difficult for me to say the future of stand-up comedy, because I'm stuck there. I'm literally like, I don't think people know what it is that we do. I really don't. I think I think Trevor was an excellent example in terms of a person who's literally able to bring a nation together without even exaggerating in an hour, or at least drop thoughts to change how people see each other literally in an hour. So for me, I think the future of stand-up is in the hands of comedians who build certain platforms that actually show South Africa the power of what we do. I mean, I see it all the time in these little clubs and these little dingy clubs that I go and try material out of. Not even the paying gigs, you know, because stand-up is not like acting or music. I can't practice it here. I literally, it's Tuesday today. I don't have a gig like in terms of a show of mine that I'm saying people must come watch. But at Kitchener's downtown, and it's winter and it's cold, but there is a comedy show happening where if I do want to go try these thoughts and these jokes, I go and I speak to people. And that's what I mean by that's what we do every single day. We speak to South Africans, and it's not just speaking to them, but it's pushing them, it's challenging them, it's using language to see which words incite and which words inspire, and then changing it up, coming back home and, you know, redoing it. And then guess what? On Wednesday, I got to go out again to some place, somewhere, and speak to a different set of people with what I learned with that set of people and see if, you know what I mean, if it works. And then if it doesn't, so we kind of build a vocab that that really is useful. So for me, I think the future of stand-up, it requires the genre to have a better reputation, and it requires us to actually show people what we do. And that one, I'm not quite sure how we're going to do it. But whether it's a talk show or a TV show or another great, you know, one-man show, one-person show that someone does that makes South Africans go, whoa, this is what these guys do, actually. I don't even know if I answered your question, but I am without a doubt convinced that the answer to South Africa's problems is stand-up comedy.
Thanks, Tats. I'm going to ask one question for each panelist again.
And you can fight me.
1 minute answers to the following questions. Jono, let's start with you. When I introduced you, Jono, I said you're a world-class sports commentator, and we listened to your commentary on Saturday. How much preparation goes into that you do on a Saturday for the first team?
I think I'm lucky in that I know the boys, I teach the boys, I know their backgrounds, I know what summer sport they do, I know what makes them tick, I know their nicknames. So in terms of commentating our own school, that's pretty easy. It's learning the names of the opposition. I do put in a bit of time from just searching the school's history to listening to other commentators that have commentated that school's game. So I know we do a lot of video analysis for the coaching side, but I'm more listening to that boy comes from Zambia and he's exchange student, or the game we just commentated on. There was a boy from Melbourne that went to St Andrews and he stayed on, and there was a nice little backstory there. That's listening through the games and maybe even doing a little bit of stalking of each player, just to have something on each boy. So yeah, I do put in an hour or two, but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Thanks, Jono. Thank you. Yolube, how much traveling is involved in your career?
Well, I think the levels to that at the moment. For Newsroom Africa, for example, what you find mostly are the people in current affairs, politics, that travel the most. They go to every part of the country because, you know, they'll be following the ANC, they'll be following certain stories that happen throughout the country. But for myself and my beat personally, when it comes to sports, we don't travel that much because a lot of what happens is in Johannesburg. So I'm probably best placed. I think the furthest I've traveled was just 2 weeks ago, and it was covering something with the NBA Africa in Rustenburg. So that was a pleasant experience in itself. So yeah, I'm just waiting for something that's gonna help me travel back to East London so I can cover Selborne College.
Thank you. Thank you. Sherwin, you're from the small East London, as we say, easy London. Sherwin, how easy was it for you to adjust to life in the USA?
It was hard at the beginning. The first 6 months was quite an adjustment because, you know, I'd established myself in my career in Johannesburg already, so I could easily have stayed in South Africa. In fact, that was the plan. And then the New York job sort of dropped into my lap, and when I got the call from HR to say that I got this job, I was shocked because it was an internal position. The SABC, I think, had tapped certain people, you know, on the shoulder and say, apply for this job. And to be clear, I was not one of them. And so I was the surprise factor, apparently. You know, I was the orange in the apple basket, and got the job, had to move here, and then started freaking out because I had to unpack my house, pack up what I was going to take, rent it out, moved, you know, I want to say SHIT, but I found, move stuff around. And that just, as a tourist, you know, my personality, that just freaked me out. And my friends were literally saying, like, what are you talking about? You're going to have the best time ever. Breathe. Get over there.
Yeah.
You're going to make new friends. You're going to make new contacts. You're going to go to Broadway. New York's amazing. And I was just like very intimidated by the moment. Not only because I was scared of this new scenario, I was also scared of failure in this job that I hadn't done in a different country before. So I was very fortunate, though, in that I met, you know, a journalist. I was based at the BBC offices initially. So I was able to interact in the newsroom. I wasn't by myself. People showed me around. You know, it's important that people take you under their wing and show you the ropes. And I very quickly acclimatized. 6 months. I had a new group of friends. That was very important because if you don't have people you can call up and talk to, you feel very isolated. So a lot of people that leave their country, you know, late 20s, early 30s, miss home and want to go back. I had a colleague who came here before I did and wanted to, you know, his goal was to just get back to South Africa, and mine has not been. I mean, I was appointed in 2008, and I'm still here, and this was a 3-year contract. So, do I miss home? Sure, I miss home. That's why I go home regularly. I'll see you in East London soon.
Thank you, Sherwin. Sibumziwe, how do you market your skills?
I don't. And that's the key. No, I don't market anything. I'm a horrible marketer. It's a good thing that I'm not in charge of my own marketing because I don't think anybody would be knowing who I am and what I do. No, but this was the thing that I was saying earlier on about agents, right? Relationships. For me, I found in the performance, in the entertainment space, relationships are key, particularly because this isn't always the case, but I've kind of found a pattern where actors tend to have particular profiles and a particular set of skills. They're very emotive people. They're probably very intuitive people, in touch with their own emotions, in touch with other people's emotions. Usually what they don't have is administrative skills. So when it comes to things like marketing themselves, you know, thinking strategically about how to put themselves in the right positions, that is usually, but not always, part of their skill sets. So my career took a huge turn when I got my agents, my acting agents, my voiceover agent, because that's basically their job is contracts and sort of getting me exposed to the right kind of jobs and the right kind of people who they feel that I would align with. So I don't really know where I would be had I not gotten them on board. And literally it's the type of thing where it's a division of labor, right? They focus on, that's a very important part of the job. You do want the right eyes on you and the right types of people seeing you. But if that is not something that someone is putting a lot of their energy into, it spreads you out as the actor then, because you now have to worry about that. Plus you have to figure out how to act, which I can assure you, if anyone has tried it before, this is a very difficult thing, and it's a whole journey in and of itself. There's a lot of personal growth and a lot of personal work that goes into figuring out how to inhabit someone else's shoes, or how to live this imaginary life that you're being asked to live. Even in the world of commercials, you know, someone gives you a script and they're like, okay, this is a script about 1 gigabyte data with MTN is now going to cost 50 Rand, and you have to make that sound as if it's a life-changing, you know, it's this incredible thing. It's going to save the world. Just data, you know. That's it's not a very easy thing to do. So you get to focus on learning how to do that while your agent does your marketing and your contract stuff. So that's how I do it.
I just want to hear you promo the Eno brand for us.
Yeah. No. At the end of the session, just for the panelists.
Tuts, last question for you, Tuts.
Yes.
How much of your material do you write in advance and how much is spontaneous?
Oh, most of it is in advance. Definitely most of it is, and the material is, I used to try and find funny things to write about. I used to read the newspaper, see what's going on out in the world in terms of like, how do I find some stuff that's funny out there? And a few years into my stand-up, what helped me, because that gets tedious because you don't know where to go, you don't know where to read, you're kind of looking all over the place. And then I realized something that when I started writing about stuff I was feeling, because I'm always feeling every day, different things, bored, whatever it is. And then when I started writing from just picking a feeling that I felt that day, I found that it was so much easier to write material. So it could be me irritated with my kids, and if it's a real emotion, it's something I can write about. So I started to look out less and just literally look at what's making me feel stuff in my life. And then obviously it's just a feeling, so that I have to change that and turn that into funny. So that's where the writing comes in. And then what helps with that is when I go on stage, I don't just go on stage with the language, but I'm also up there with that feeling that I had about that irritation or that inspiration or that demotivation, and it adds to the performance. So definitely most of it at home, and then the magic is obviously when the audience comes and adds their flavor, and it just becomes something that I didn't even expect.
Thank you, Tas. Gentlemen and viewers out there, I'm sure you can all agree that we've been blessed with a fantastic panel of experts in the field to put language in action. Our sincere thanks go out to Sherwin Brycepiece, to Jono Kruger, to Tatsan Konza, Simpumziwe, to Tuaba, and Yulelwa Koshe. This webinar will be posted on the Selborne College YouTube channel in the next few days, and the link will be shared amongst through normal channels out there. I really want to thank all of you, the panel, for being here. I really enjoyed listening to your stories. The viewers out there, thank you for tuning into this channel. I enjoyed speaking to the panel. I really learned a lot tonight. So thank you very much for being here. Good night. Sherwin, please get better out there.
Yeah.
All of you. Have a blessed evening. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Erasmus. Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.